Hey everybody, welcome back to Church Talk, where we talk about everything involving the local church. My name is Rob, and today we're going to be talking about what is the difference between a worship leader and a worship pastor. All right, so on today's video, we're talking about what's the difference between a worship leader and a worship pastor. We use the terms interchangeably a lot. Sometimes it doesn't really mean anything different. It's just what you call it. But that can be also taken as like just in general, a leader and a pastor. Is a pastor a leader? Yes, they are. But is a leader a pastor? Not really. So we're just going to talk about that just a little bit. If you are a worship leader, or if you call yourself a worship pastor, or sometimes we get in the titles and we're like, who really cares, right? But it kind of does matter, because if you're leading people but not pastoring them, there's a difference there, and we need to understand what we're called into and what we're doing as far as the role that we play for the Lord in the local church. Now, many times we place a label on somebody, or we place a title to somebody, and they may not be doing what that title says they're doing, such as the title of pastor. We can lead people without pastoring them, but you can't pastor people without leading them. So we'll just touch base on that just for a moment. A worship leader is obviously somebody who leads people in worship. It's a no-brainer, right? You lead songs, you lead people in worship on a Sunday, on a Wednesday, on whatever day that it is, you're leading people in worship. So obviously worship leading is when you lead people in worship. But I refer to my entire team as worship leaders, whether they are vocalists, they're on an instrument, they're on the drums, the keys, whatever it is. We're all in front of people and we're all leading people in worship. So everyone on my team, every one of us, are considered worship leaders. But not all of us are worship pastors. When you step into the role of a worship pastor, you're stepping into the pastoral role. You're, number one, you are pastoring your team, but you're also pastoring your congregation. And you do it from the role of a worship leader. So you're helping your pastor the congregation, and you're also almost like you're treating your worship team as a small group within itself, that you are pastoring that team. Just like a youth pastor will pastor the youth, a children's pastor is pastoring the children, a small groups pastor is pastoring that small group. A worship pastor is also pastoring their worship team. So they're pastoring the worship leaders of the church. A worship pastor is constantly pouring into the team and pouring into those who they're pastoring. A worship leader basically is just leading people in worship. They don't take on that pastoral role. Also, the second thing that a worship leader may do that a worship pastor does not is travel. There's a lot of times, now we've been in this role as well, between churches we would be traveling. We were worship leaders, but we weren't in that pastoral role. So we could travel and go to church, and we never really developed a relationship with anybody because we were there for one Sunday and gone. And we may come back again and you get to know people, but you don't really get a relationship with people. So when you are a worship leader, you're really not in a relationship to the people. You're leading them in worship for a service, and you may go on. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's where your calling is. But I think the reason I'm talking about this is just to kind of put that difference there between the leader and the pastor, as far as within the worship ministry, or really any ministry within the church. You can be a leader of something, but you're really not in that pastoral role. And like I say, some of this is like, what's it really matter? It's a title. But it really does matter when you really dig into it, because if you are a pastor, you are over a flock. And if you are a leader, you may be leading just something or someone or a group of people into a certain direction, but you're not like protective over them. You're not assisting them in their lives, and you can't really speak over them as a shepherd. You are just, while you're together, you're leading them to go do this goal, to do this thing, but you're not really given that responsibility or that role to speak over their lives and to pastor and shepherd them. So I think it's good that we know the differences of what we're doing. That if you are a worship leader and you're trying to fulfill that worship pastor role, you may find it difficult because the relationships may not be there. But if you are fulfilling that role as a worship pastor, yeah, you have the availability to speak into your people and to pastor those people. But also, number 3 is that sometimes a worship leader, just a leader, will maybe they'll have a do as I'm told mentality. And I say that and it sounds bad. It sounds like, it's a bad mentality, but we do need those people who will carry out the vision of what the pastor or the leader has, that they can lead in that vision underneath of somebody else. So we do need those people, but those leaders will help lead within that role. They will help lead within that ministry, but they're not the pastor or the main leader over that ministry. They're kind of an under shepherd, so to speak. Maybe not even a shepherd. They help gather the flock. They help lead people into a certain direction. It's not really their vision that they're helping carry out. And that's needed as well. Many times a pastor will have a vision for where he's wanting to go, and the leaders will catch on to that vision and help that vision succeed and help that pastor succeed. A pastor wants to pour into people. He is relational. He wants to see other people grow and other people excel and succeed. Whereas a lot of times if you are, and I hate to use the term just here, but if you're only a worship leader, then you're not really pouring into other people. You are coming on a Sunday with a set list, and you are leading people in worship, and you go home and you don't think about those people for another week. The relationship isn't there. But if you've been called to be a pastor, or a worship pastor, or a youth pastor, any type of pastor, you're going to want to see them develop into something greater than what they are. Not saying that the people that you're leading, that you're pastoring, are less than or anything like that, but you want to see them grow. You want to see the Lord use them in deeper ways and higher ways than what they are presently. And like say, I'm looking at this from a worship leader perspective. As a worship leader, you're not pouring into others. You are leading people in worship. You're leading them in a service, and then that's all. If you've been put in place as a worship pastor and you are pastoring those people, but you've always been a worship leader, and you've accepted a role as a worship pastor at a local church, and you're like, I've been traveling for years. I've been in a band. I've been doing whatever. And now this is different. It really is. It really is different when you bring in the pastoral role in that ministry, because now it's not about, many times in worship leading, we tend to make it about the performance of how it sounds, how we can grab the people's attention and get them to come with us on this journey in this certain session of worship, in this moment of worship, in this moment in time in the service. But many times worship pastoring isn't about that moment. I mean, we do want to do well in those moments. We do want to have an excellent team, but many times in the developing of people, we have to allow them space and allow them time to lead, to grow, to to mature into what the Lord has for them, and if we are constantly thinking about the performance, we're constantly thinking about how good it sounds and not the pouring in of, to our people, then those younger or maybe less experienced people within our team, they're not getting the experience of really leading people in worship. They're not getting the experience of maybe, playing the keyboard during service. They only play during practice, or they are, the drummer only gets to drum during practice and on a Wednesday. You're not giving him, not giving your drummer a time for a Sunday, or you name it. It's all these things. So many times we like to, put our best on Sunday or something, and then everybody else is they're part of the team, but we kind of fill them in. We shouldn't be that way. We should be looking at our team and trying to develop them and give them the opportunity to, I don't want to say the opportunity to fail, but the opportunity to fail, the opportunity to mess up, the opportunity to lead people in worship, feel the weight of leading them as well. Because if we as worship leaders constantly take the weight upon us, then we also want to take all the glory upon us as well. When things go well, we want all the credit. We want all the, and it should be the glory to the Lord, the credit to the team, that they have worked hard, that they have succeeded, and all the glory goes to the Lord. But many times, especially in worship ministry, it can get messed up to where we take the glory. We want the applause. We want the good jobs. And so if you are leading your people in worship and you're not pastoring your team, and it's a slow process. You can't just start jumping in and start placing people in. Maybe some can, but what I've found is every team is different. And sometimes it's a slow process to start to build things and build people's confidence to where, because if you just put somebody right out there on the platform and you're like, hey, sing this song or lead this set or whatever, and you push them into it and they're not ready to do that, you could really crush their confidence and they may just quit and be like, I'm not doing this anymore. I've messed up. When you feel like, hey, they are ready, you've been paying attention as their pastor, you've been praying over them, you've been seeking the Lord on their behalf, on your team's behalf, then you know when a person is ready, you know when the Lord is wanting to pull them into more of a leadership role within the body, within the church, within the team itself. So you give them those opportunities, you give them that time, and you allow the mess ups, because all of us will mess up. That's part of it. It's part of being human. That's part of, one thing I love about our worship ministry is that we mess up. But the cool thing about us messing up is that we are practiced enough. And I believe most of our band, if not all of our band, is good enough on their instrument that when we mess up, we continue to flow and help each other out, cover each other. So when there is a mess up, we can, if the drummer gets off just a little bit, the rest of the band goes with the drummer. If the keyboardist goes off a little bit and can't find their way back on, sometimes there's a skip in the music and we end up going to where the keyboard is, to where they don't have to get. And when we're all doing that together and we're looking out for one another, then when there is a mess up in the music part of it, everybody is covering one another. And it's like, who even knew that anybody messed up to begin with, because the team covered one another. And I think that when you're pastoring your team and you are, you're looking out for the team in general and all the people in your team, and you're not just wanting to perform, because so many times we get into a performance mode in worship. It's so easy to just want to be the best, and we use all the tools that's available to us. And I think anything that you want to use to make everything better, to be excellent, I think it's good. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to use whatever tools that you can and that everybody wants to use. Now, that being said, there's click tracks and things of that nature. Sometimes they can be really good tools, and other times people just don't like them. And if you're like me, I'm one of those that just don't like them, and I'm really blessed that I have a team that just doesn't like it as well. But if you're one of those that really does like them and your team doesn't, then maybe you need to not use them if your team doesn't like them, or vice versa. If your team likes them and you don't, then you need to be flexible and use the tools that your team is needing to use. But I will say too that with a click track, it becomes difficult to change things on the fly. If you do mess up, everybody is listening for that click. And if they mess up, it's up to that person to get back in, and they can't really be covered by the rest of the band. They can't hear where somebody has gotten out or gotten off, or if the singer gets off, because there's been so many times to where we've had a singer that has started at the wrong place, and they start and they just go, and our band will flow with them, and nobody really even knows what's happened except for the band. They're like, oh, wait a minute, you started way too early, started on the wrong part of the song. But we all just went with them. Now, when you're on a click and that happens, there's no coming back from that, because you are slave to that click. I won't say the click, but the guide. If you're using like backing tracks and things like that. So that's one of the negative things about backing tracks. Like I say, that's a personal preference type of thing when you look at clicks and backing tracks. And I may do a video on that, just sharing my thoughts on it. I've used them before, and we don't use them currently, so I have some thoughts on that, and maybe I'll do a video on that pretty soon. But yeah, when you are pastoring your people and not just leading them, but you're pastoring them, you're going to take time, you're going to pray for them, you're going to get to know them, you're going to be in their lives. If something happens in their life, you want to be there for them. You're going to be a pastor of that small group, and not just a person who leads songs on a Sunday morning. And there's nothing wrong with either one. We just have to know what is the role that we are playing, what is the role the Lord has us in, and understand, how am I supposed to perform this duty that the Lord wants me to do? Does He want me to pastor people, or does He want me to come in and just lead the people in worship, and somebody else is going to be pastoring the people? Maybe it's a smaller congregation and the pastor is pastoring everybody. Until the congregation grows to the point of the pastor cannot pastor everyone, and there needs to be several pastors underneath of the lead pastor. And that's a different story there. That's a different conversation. In a long way to say it, that's the difference between a worship leader and a worship pastor, and you can take that for every other position within the church as well, a leader versus a pastor. It's all kind of the same thing of some of our talking points we had. So there's my thoughts when we talk about the differences between the two. So I hope you guys have gotten some value out of this. And if this is the type of content that you like talking about church and about things about church, leave me a comment down below of what you think. Maybe some video ideas, or some questions, or some concerns, or some things that you may be facing or may be seeing within the local church that I'll give my opinion on, and I'll comment back, or maybe I will do a video based upon that thought. So yeah, leave me a comment. Make sure you like the video, share it, and we'll see you guys next time on Church Talk. God bless.